In 2010, this area, which was known to have been farmland, sadly, for a number of years, it was really just being a giant dumping ground. Building this labyrinth here was intentionally for energetically healing the space. So pulling out a tremendous amount of trash, and as we were doing that, really listening to the native species that were here and trying to clear around them. This particular piece of land was formerly the Center for Transformational Practice, where we weren't just thinking about earth care and people share and fair share, but also thinking about inner transformation being a foundation for environmental and social change. And so very much the way we listen and observe the landscape is turned back inward to the way we listen to ourselves and listen to each other and look for those opportunities to think of sort of a holistic, long-term interconnectivity of our community and how people can participate. So because of our proximity to town, we have a lot of people just passing through here, seeking the river, seeking the park, and there's fruit that's free for the picking. There's educational opportunities. One of our urban challenges is, just kind of working with transient encampments and things that we both want to say, hey, everybody's welcome to come and pick the berries and enjoy the land, and everyone has a right to do that. And with more positive presence of people collaborating, people bringing in the energy of, planting together, how do we mutually care for it and keep it safe for everyone? We're sitting at the confluence of the White River, the Connecticut River. We have tons of aerial traffic from the Lebanon airport. We have the train tracks. We have the highway. So this particular spot, which we very much think of as urban because we're so close to town, is an amazing confluence of energy where we have a lot of margins that we can clearly observe about the differences between the open cleared spaces and the potential of mimicking what's going on at Clifford Park, in Ratcliffe Park, and also this other ecosystem where we are basically in a floodplain with an incredible diversity, but also a lot of invasives and a lot of species that are in competition with the native species that are here. So we have a lot of amazing butternut trees here. We have a lot of pagoda dogwood, and our goal in working with this particular location has been to learn about who's here, who is good for native habitat and pollination and healthy ecosystem. And really, as things are getting cleared and changed for human interaction, prioritizing the native species and learning about what we can bring in as additional native species that are both medicinal, food-bearing, soil producing. One of the practices that we're doing is using the resources that are here in a variety of ways to really harness the function and the energy. So when we have big trees fall down, we're gathering those limbs, we're gathering that awesome leaf material, and we're composting in place and making soil where we're able to then plant these berry bushes and things in. So I think that this site has some similarities to our first site. We have a lot of the same species of fruit and nut and berry bushes that we saw at Stratford and planted at Clifford. And we're also sort of doing the minimum of management in a way. So there's a chance to see a lot of both healthy competition and also the challenges of having big vision, planting things really close together, and then kind of watching what happens when a big tree comes down and falls on them. So one of our first steps was taking down, and they were willingly coming down, some of these really large box elder trees. So it opened up the growing plain to bring in fruit trees and berry bushes and nut trees, but it also gave us the mimicry of the forest floor where we were using those big logs to create hugel culture. Responding to our urban environment is that we have the water treatment plant just one click down from us. And so bringing in fragrant things is really helpful. A lot of the species on this land are just moved around as they make babies. So we have a rowan tree that is growing other places that we then bring the saplings, bringing in black haws, things for medicine. And in a lot of places, what we're leaving could also be thought of as space holders. We know that they're aggressive species. We don't want them repopulating, but we also don't want to clear cut the land. So we're thinking of a long-term plan of transition. Over here, for instance, we have a plum guild, which is 5 domestic varieties of plums, but they're planted right next to the native plums that were originally growing here. This cross-pollination is really exciting because there's a ton of fruit this year. We would love to by listening to the community and listening to the experts, learn what species in particular we can be bringing in and replacing as some of these bigger trees are phasing themselves out in the storms. So currently we've brought back elderberry, we've brought some chestnut trees, we're thinking about elm, we're thinking about native sycamore. But I'm really eager to learn from the experts, like how can we benefit the river and benefit agroforestry within this riparian area in a way that is phased over a period of time that is realistic, and then like really catching the opportunity as things both clear themselves naturally and as we make concerted efforts to protect the plantings that we are investing in. I encourage you to just observe the incredible vines that are really what's like networking this crazy terrain together with some non-native species like the Eurasian bittersweet and grapevines, and specifically the multiflora rose, which may have been brought in as a conservation effort because it's very good at holding the soil, but it's also very good at climbing the trees and pulling them down. So as our understanding of like what are the good species to bring in, we really have to look at the long-term effects about, okay, we're bringing this in, but are we also catching it before it goes to seed or controlling the way it spreads? There's so many naturalized species that aren't native that are also of benefit to this ecosystem. Right. It's something we just have to accept and deal with. So like stopping the narrative of invasive, like we must build a wall, like that's not going to happen, nor is that energetic some way where we want to be ripping and tearing out here, because we've noticed that when we're ripping and tearing, we're actually like encouraging more aggressive growth. So it's really trying to educate ourselves about watching the cycle and like when to put the input of like, now we cut this back, now we cut this down, like let's catch this before it goes to seed. How can we start to listen to the rhythm of the land and work with it, which is like a pretty big project, and there's so much to learn. But I think changing the mindset around eradicating something and like learning, like number one, does it have any benefit to our natural insects and pollinators, like what are the most harmful things, and like talking about the Japanese knotweed, like what do we already know that we don't want to repeat based on other people's experiences in similar conditions, but like what can we also not make assumptions about and start to learn more about in case there is potential benefit.
And knotweed is an incredible medicine for Lyme disease, which is also, this is the epicenter for
That's
why
right.
it's
Showing
Lyme.
up, yeah.
And
I
so,
didn't know that.
yeah, when we follow the rhythms of nature and are connected to it, often the earth provides the medicines that we need because, of course, we're connected to the earth. And so if we were in balance with it, could we harvest? The amount of resources that go into invasive removal is so great. Millions of dollars we're talking.
Putting them in plastic bags.
Yeah, like putting them in plastic bags and then shipping them to the landfill. And like, it's not to say that it's like, but what you're saying is like create the balance, which comes from the connection with the land and has an efficiency built around it, around like, now's the time to do this. Now's the time to cut the seed heads on this. And like, because we are so, there's not enough people to do the work, right? Of like, but shifting that mindset, I just like, love listening to.
I think the term invasive implies war, and we're really at war with these plants, and they're plants.
Yeah.
And so I saw the term opportunistic plants
yeah.
as opposed to invasive plants. And,
Yeah.
and I think that's really a much better way to look at them. They're just taking the opportunity.
Maybe that's one thing that I take back with some of our NRCS and FSA colleagues is more so the need to look at the climate adaptation and mitigation for what we consider noxious plants, because the medicinal side is a lot what we are starting to hear and the need for, right? And so when you say Japanese knotweed, we try to eradicate, for lack of better words, Japanese knotweed. And canary reed is one that has recently come up. And so in a lot of our what we call like forage management plans or invasive species control plans, or even on some of our what we call CREP, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program buffers, we literally try to remove that. And so more so the adaptation, maybe that's something we do have what they call considerations. Maybe that's something we need to just discuss to figure out how do we do it, because I can see working potentially with some landowners in the future where their objective would be not so much to eradicate but to work in harmony with them that's in that space. So